All right, welcome back everybody for another deep dive. Today we're going to be looking at it's a pretty exciting one for me. I
Yeah.
think for a lot of people it's we're looking at the Honda CB750 Cafe Racer.
Oh, yeah.
And we've got some really cool source material to work from KR Endry's piece from March 20th, 2025.
Great.
It's called CB750 Cafe Racer Honda Timeless Classic Reimagined for Riders.
Nice.
So, this is more than just an old motorcycle that someone sort of like spruced up and put some, fancy parts on.
Mm.
What we're trying to do today is really get into like why this motorcycle is so important in history and how it's kind of carved its place
Mm.
in the motorcycle world and why it's such a celebrated sort of icon in the cafe racer scene.
It's really interesting because I think when you look at the CB750 Cafe Racer, you're really looking at the meeting point between something that was genuinely revolutionary in its time,
Yeah.
and then sort of this subculture that has taken it and made it into something that really speaks to a lot of people.
Yeah, yeah, and we're going to get into that, but I think to kind of set the stage for everybody listening is to, the article does a really good job of going way back to the original Honda CB750,
Yeah.
and it calls it the first superbike. Like
Right.
that's a pretty big title to claim.
It is.
So what was it about this motorcycle that really kind of made it
Well, if you look at the kind of the history of motorcycles prior to that,
Yeah.
to have a large capacity motorcycle that was reliable,
Mhm.
that you could ride every day, but also had that performance aspect was not something that was really readily available to the masses.
Right.
And they introduced this inline-four engine, which was a huge step forward for the time. And it gave it a power delivery that was so smooth, and for a big bike like that,
Yeah.
it was really something else.
Yeah.
You factor in things like a front disc brake and an electric starter.
Mhm.
These were things that really, um, you know, elevated it above the rest.
Okay, so it wasn't just about going faster. It was just a more sophisticated machine.
Yeah, I think that's the key takeaway for me is that
Okay.
it wasn't just a hot rod. It was something that you could live with. It was easy to ride, and it really kind of threw down the gauntlet for other manufacturers.
Yeah, and the article even talks about that, that other manufacturers were like, "Oh shoot, like we gotta step up our game here. Like
Yeah.
how do we respond to this?"
Exactly. Exactly.
And that I mean that says a lot about how much of an impact it
Mm.
made.
And the thing is, it wasn't just a show pony. It was very successful on the road and on the racetrack, and so
Yeah.
it really it proved itself. It
Yeah.
got that legendary status, not just from the the performance it had, but also for the innovative engineering and reliability that Japanese motorcycles have really become known for.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then we fast forward a bit and we see this super bike kind of morph into something a little bit different, which is this cafe racer.
Right.
So how did that happen? How did the CB750 become so associated with this culture and this style?
The whole idea of the cafe racer movement was really about stripping a bike down to its bare essentials.
Mhm.
Going fast and having this very kind of visceral um, riding experience. And
Yeah.
and what was really cool is that the CB750 really lent itself to that.
Yeah.
It had this fairly simple frame, which was really great for customization and the look of it. That classic look. It just worked so well with that cafe racer aesthetic.
Mhm.
And the article even says that that it was a really good bike to personalize. It
Mm.
wasn't over-engineered, it wasn't super complicated, and so it was really accessible for a lot of people who wanted to kind of get their hands dirty and create something unique. And so that ease of modification, I think, combined with the fact that it was already such an iconic motorcycle, really kind of made it, that core part of the cafe racer.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And then, moving on to kind of the look of the bike,
Yeah.
the Cafe Racer, the article's got a section on, CB750 Cafe Racer design and aesthetics.
Okay.
What are like the visual cues that you're looking for when you see one of these things?
Okay, so you've got the standard CP750, which already had this very kind of elegant look to it,
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, inline.
It's clean, it's simple, it's
Balanced proportions, but
yeah.
the Cafe Racer treatment kind of takes it a step further.
Yeah.
So you get these clip-on handlebars, which immediately lower the riding position.
Right.
Gives the bike a more aggressive look, a more a more purposeful stance.
Mm.
And then you've got these sleek fuel tanks. Often they'll be a bit more streamlined.
Yeah.
And then you've got the solo seats, which really emphasizes that single rider experience.
Yeah, I love how the kind of the solo seat really kind of accentuates
It does.
the line of the frame from the fuel tank all the way back.
And it's not just about looks. It helps with the aerodynamics. It gives the rider a more kind of tucked in position.
Yeah, yeah.
And the minimalist approach also kind of lets you see more of the mechanical bits of the bike, the engine, the frame. It really kind of celebrates
The raw mechanics of it, engineering of it.
It's a really cool blend of form and function.
Absolutely. It's like it's like the bike is saying, this is what I am, no distractions.
Yeah.
Now the engine's obviously a huge part of why this bike is so legendary.
Oh yeah.
And the article calls that inline-four iconic, and it is a a truly iconic engine.
It is.
Why is it so special, particularly in like a cafe racer context?
Well, I mean, aside from the fact that it was a groundbreaking engine in its time, I mean, it provides such a smooth and reliable power delivery.
Yeah.
And, for a cafe racer, you want that kind of punchy power that you can get to easily,
Mm-hmm.
And the CB750 has that in spades, And the cool thing is that, even though it's an old engine, there's still room for, a lot of modern upgrades.
Oh, interesting.
Things like electronic ignition, improved carburetors.
Yeah.
These things can really, make it a more reliable, more high-performing engine for, modern riding conditions.
Absolutely.
So you get that classic character, but you can also have, a more refined experience. It's a really great blend.
Yeah.
Vintage feel, usable power.
Now, talking about riding the thing, the article really paints a picture of, what it's like to ride one of these things.
Hmm.
It uses words like, agile, fun, unforgettable.
Right.
So what is it about, actually throwing a leg over one of these things and riding it that creates that kind of...
Well, a lot of that comes from, the frame's fairly lightweight. It handles really well.
Right.
So you can be in the city or you can be out on the twisties and it feels confident.
Yeah.
And then you've got the ergonomics, the clip-on handlebars, the rear set foot pegs.
Yeah.
It puts you in a more engaged position. You're kind of leaning forward a little bit, but
right. Yeah.
it's still comfortable enough for a longer ride.
Yeah.
It strikes that balance.
And even like I imagine the sound of that engine, the exhaust note must really kind of play into that whole experience too.
Definitely, that smooth linear power delivery.
Yeah.
And that sound just kind of adds to that whole sense of adventure and connection with the machine.
Yeah, and for those listening who are maybe a little more hands-on, the article calls building a CB750 Cafe Racer a DIY dream.
Yeah. Yeah.
So why is that? Why is it such a good platform for someone to kind of build their own?
It really comes down to the way the motorcycle is designed.
Yeah.
That simpler frame makes it easier to work on. The fact that it was produced for so many years means that there's a massive aftermarket for parts. So you can find whatever you want, whether you're looking for a specific style of tank or performance upgrades, it's all out there.
Yeah.
And the article even talks about how there's some basic modifications you can do, just like putting on clip-ons, a solo seat, changing the tank.
Right.
These are pretty straightforward changes that can really make a huge difference.
Yeah. Yeah.
In how the bike looks and feels, and it's really kind of a blank canvas for people to create their own.
Yeah, it's a rolling piece of art. You can really kind of do whatever you want with it.
Totally.
And the article even gives a rough figure for how much you might spend doing this. They say anywhere from like $2,000 to $5,000 for a basic build up to like $10,000 or more for a really kind of high-end custom job.
And that's what's so cool is that there's such a range there. If
Right.
if you're on a budget, you can do something simple. But if you really want to go all out, you can really transform the thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that kind of range of, financial commitment, that says something, that
Absolutely.
there's something there for everybody.
Mm,
And obviously every motorcycle has its pros and its cons.
right.
And the article, again does a really good job of kind of laying out,
Yeah.
What to consider when thinking about doing a project like this.
Sure.
What are some of the things that people should really kind of think about before jumping into something like this?
Well, obviously the timeless design, the amount of customization you can do is a huge plus, right?
Mm.
And the engine's very reliable, particularly if you get one that's been well maintained,
Yeah.
And the older ones are relatively affordable,
Right.
but you have to keep in mind that older bikes tend to need a bit more maintenance
Of course.
than some of the newer machines.
Absolutely.
And the CB750 is a bit heavier than some of the newer cafe racers out there.
Right.
And there is a learning curve, particularly if you're not a very experienced mechanic,
Yeah.
to building one of these things.
Right.
So
Yeah.
so you have to kind of weigh, how much you value those classic looks,
Right.
and how much you're willing to, get your hands dirty and build the thing yourself versus, do you want something that's maybe a bit more modern and easier to maintain?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's always a trade-off, isn't there?
Yeah.
But I think the beauty of the CB750 is that it kind of sits right in that
Sweet spot.
sweet spot, where it's old enough to have that classic look, but it's also, it's not so old that it's a complete nightmare to keep running.
Yeah.
Now, the article also, it does a good job of comparing, the CB750 to some of its modern competitors, and they specifically mention, the Triumph Thruxton and the Yamaha XSR 700.
Yeah.
So how does the CB750 kind of stack up against these newer bikes? What does it offer that they maybe don't?
Well, it's a really interesting comparison because the Thruxton is a really beautiful motorcycle.
Mm-hmm.
It's a high performance machine right out of the box. You
Right.
get fuel injection, you get ABS, all the bells and whistles,
Mm-hmm.
but it does come with a higher price tag.
Yeah.
So, and for some people who are really into that DIY ethic,
Yeah.
it might not have the same appeal.
Mm-hmm.
The XSR 700 on the other hand is a great bike for newer riders.
Yeah.
It's more affordable, it's lighter, it's got a lot of modern tech.
Mm-hmm.
But, it doesn't have that history, that depth of customization options
Yeah.
that the CB750 has.
Yeah.
And I think what really makes the CB750 special is that combination of, it's got that heritage, it's got that vast potential for personalization, and it's relatively affordable,
Mm-hmm.
to get an old one and start with that as a base.
Mm-hmm.
It's a motorcycle with a lot of soul.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's something to be said for that connection to history, and that feeling that you get when you're writing something that has that kind of weight to it.
Yeah.
So as we kind of wrap up here, what are the key takeaways from this whole discussion about the CB750 Cafe Racer?
Well, I think the first one is that the Honda CB750 was a revolutionary motorcycle.
Yeah.
It changed everything.
They really did.
The second one is that the design of it, the way it's built, just made it, this perfect, icon for the cafe racer movement.
Mm-hmm.
And then it gives you this blend of classic style and the potential to have some really, really modern performance too.
Yeah.
And then fourthly, building one of these things is a really great DIY project
Yeah,
for
sure.
a lot of people. And then lastly, even though it's got some competition from these modern classics out there,
Sure.
the CB750 has something really special. That heritage, that customization, it's got a unique appeal that's hard to beat.
I think you nailed it. I think that's a perfect kind of summary of what this motorcycle is all about. And as we said at the top of the show, it's more than just a motorcycle. It's a piece of history.
Hmm.
It's art.
It's a link to the past, but it's also very much alive in the present,
Absolutely.
And it really kind of makes you think, doesn't it? That
Mhm.
that when you combine that history
Mhm.
with the fact that people are building these things themselves and
Mhm.
creating their own versions of this classic machine, what kind of impact does that have
Yeah.
on the person who builds it? What does it do to their life,
Right.
to their identity?
It's a fascinating thing to think about, and it's more than just getting from point A to point B.
Yeah.
It's there's a whole other level to it.
It's an experience.
Yeah, and I think that's a perfect place to leave it for everybody listening is to just to think about that a little bit.
Yeah.
What does it mean to ride a machine like this? What does it do to you?
Exactly.
And on that note, we'll wrap it up. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, this was fun.
Yeah, this was a good one. I love these motorcycles.
They're cool.
They're just cool.
They are.
And we'll see you next time.
See ya.